Okay, so continue from there, Mark.
Sure, what I was saying is that the gay agenda is not satisfied until they force pastors into having to perform their weddings. And, you know, there's a way out of this. In America, before the mid-19th century, Americans never had a state that produced any marriage licensing. Now, let's consider it this way. Let's say you drive a car. Now, in order to drive the car on public roads, what does the state have to do for you?
They have to license you, or
they have
provide
to license you.
Right.
So to license you is another way of sanctioning you to drive on the road. Now, we don't think of marriage licenses in that way, and if we did, we would balk.
And you and I could argue on another show that there are all sorts of Supreme Court decisions that even the licensing of drivers is completely unconstitutional. But that's another argument for the other day.
Right, that's another argument.
Go ahead, Mark.
But for the state to license a marriage is for the state to sanction a marriage.
Right, right.
And the state was never in the sanctioned marriage business until the mid-1900s.
Right.
In the mid-1900s, they started issuing licenses so that they could control interracial marriages.
Yes.
Well, eventually the Supreme Court struck it down, but they kept issuing the marriage license. So what I tell people is simply don't use the state for your marriage. Use the church. The way the state used to do it is the church would handle the wedding. The church would handle the marriage. Two people would get married. They would be certified by the church as being married and having gone through a ceremony. And then the people would take that certification to the state, and the state would merely log them. Now the state's not sanctioning marriage, therefore they have no right to define marriage.
Let me back you up there. And originally, even before that, marriage was a private contract. Because sometimes families, Mark knows this, he knows his history, sometimes families would get together and marry their sons and daughters for financial means, property means, power means, government means, various military means, whatever the means was. Just study a history. Mark knows what I'm talking about.
For thousands of years.
For thousands of years. It was right. Kenny's right. It was a private contract between a man, a woman, the husband, the father, the families involved in there. Then you're right, Mark. Government started to get involved in this. This is where the screw turned, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, when you think about what I'm suggesting, as a pastor myself, I am no longer going to do any weddings that involve the state, because the state has inserted itself into this definition of marriage. I no longer recognize the state as a valid institution to license two people to be married.
Right.
So, if everybody would do that, then the state would be forced to either say, we're not going to recognize that marriage, time doing, because of the precedents in the court system. By the way, most family Bibles still come with a marriage certificate in them, and they're valid in a court of law.
Really? I did not know that.
They're valid in a court of law. So the state would have to recognize a wedding that is done by the church without going through the state. And this would take the whole issue off the table.
So wait a minute. Back up, Mark. Yeah. So if I went down to the bookstore tomorrow and bought a Bible, there would be an insert, or is it somewhere? Please, I apologize if I don't know every verse of the Bible, Pastor. I'm sorry, sir. But is there? Explain this.
This is why I'm an atheist.
Yeah, get into this a little bit. What is that?
Most family Bibles are those big Bibles you buy to put on your coffee table. And they usually have a family tree in there where you can write all the descendants and whatnot in there. But they also have, and this is the way it was done. They would take that marriage certificate, it's perforated, you take it out, you go through the ceremony, the witnesses sign it, the pastor signs it, and then they took that certified document to the state. And then the state would simply say, okay, we recognize that you two are married. Yeah, now that takes the state out of making the definition of marriage. they could care less. All they are seeing is a contract between two people, and that's all that matters. Now, so if we would do that, rather than having the state involved, then this whole issue would have to go away.
Exactly right. But here's the rub, is that many gays, they look at theology, and I'm specifically pointing to Christianity, they reject all that. They somehow, in their ipso de facto lefty mindset, their definition of Christianity is that it's hateful towards them, whereas, this is why I love having guests like Mark on the show, whereas if they just knew this one little caveat, the problem could be solved, couldn't it, Mark?
Absolutely. All they would, I mean, if gay people wanted to be married, then they can start their own church.
Why not?
This is freedom of religion in this country, and so they can start their own organization.
Oh,
and,
man.
That is a
and
simple
then the
loophole.
state, all the states
no one will do
doing,
it.
they're not sanctioning marriage now. They're not sanctioning marriage between a man or a woman, or between two women, or between two men, or a man and a monkey, or a dog and whatever.
I don't think
They're just recognizing that there's a contract between two people, and now they're out of the loop. And so if you take the state out of the loop, then this, like I said, this whole problem goes away. You don't need amendments to the constitutions of the states or the federal government. See, the problem with an amendment to the government is that you are now saying that the government has the authority to define marriage in the first place.
Right, and they have no business being there.
They don't. As this is an issue that's outside of their
purview, their constitutional purview. But
Yeah.
Mark, getting once again back to my first statement about implosion.
Yeah.
Everything's on the table now. Government is involved in every, excuse my French, goddamn facet of everything that we do. I mean, from the minute we wake up in the morning to when we go to bed at night, even when we're dreaming, even the government, I'm sure, somehow has some sort of hold, some sort of claw.
And what do you think your dream means?
And what do you think your dream means? Really, Mark, I mean, again,
How does that make
we've
you
gone off
feel?
the cliff. We've completely gone off the cliff, haven't we, sir?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so many easy solutions to some of these problems, and I'm sure politicians don't like having to handle this hot potato anyways.
Right.
And so this is a great way. And by the way, the state of Mississippi have 2 counties that have now said we're not issuing licenses anymore for any marriages.
Ah, there's the loophole.
Yes.
And Mark just said it earlier. It's like he's not going to do any more marriages. He's not. Yeah.
Well, no, he said he's not going to do any more
recognizing
marriages
the
when
government.
state
I
is-
understand that.
marriages, yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So
Amazing.
then you have Alabama, who was just recently doing this. I think they passed the House, but it got struck down in the Senate. Oklahoma's another state that's doing this. So this is a way for states to get out of this whole issue to start with.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, just remove religion from the issue.
Remove the state from the issue is what he's saying. Mark, let's segue here a little bit. Let's move on in the interview. One of the great things that I watched in your interviews is you talked about experience, about a person needs to have the experience. Saul Alinsky talked about the experience, and if that person doesn't have the experience, you give the experience to that person. You somehow make them believe what you're talking about. You give them that chance to be part of that movement. You expose them to the experience of that movement. Listen, I read a great book by a British psychiatrist, and he wrote the book in 1967, R.D. Laing. He wrote the book, and the title is Politics of Experience. He spoke about the very same thing, but he didn't speak about it in Alinsky terms. He spoke about it in a very medical, psychological term. Basically, his premise was, you know, you put 10 people in a room, the ceiling's painted white, 9 of those people are told that the ceiling's painted blue. The 9 people agree that the ceiling's painted blue. The one person who looks up and says, no, it's white, hello, just look up there, it's white, that person is ostracized. What R.D. Laing was talking about was the person's experience. My experience, see, you and I are talking right now on Skype. My experience of this interview is completely opposite of your experience of this interview. I don't know what you're thinking. Kenny's sitting here. His experience of this interview is completely different from...
Surreal.
Oh, it's very surreal for Kenny over there. But I think you understand what I'm going here. What R.D. Laing was talking about is the politics of experience. Each individual person has each individual experiences of the very same thing. You get three people in a room who look at something, stand them around in a corner, they're all going to have a different opinion. Even though they're looking at the same thing, they're looking at it from different angles, different opinions. And Mark, you talked about, excuse me, about how Saul Alinsky said about giving people this experience.
Yes.
And so, I think what I want to ask you is, given this paradigm that Saul Alinsky talks about, and looking at, just go on the news, go on YouTube, you see the individual people interpreting this paradigm of racism, this paradigm of political correctness, this paradigm of equality, this paradigm of I don't know, pick any subject that the liberals want to talk about.
As far as I'm concerned,
in fact, the liberals who want to promote this experience is running up against the individual's experience. Mark, take it from here.
Well, the whole use of experience, because Saul Alinsky was a utilitarian, and utilitarians believe that the means justify the end.
Right.
That if you want to arrive at a certain goal, you don't have to employ morality to arrive at that goal. You can use whatever means you want to get what you're looking for. And for the Democratic Party, what they're looking for is votes.
Right. But that's what I'm saying.
That's
what I'm saying. They're presenting this paradigm of experience in order to give their constituents this experience of you need to join us. This is what we believe in, and this is what you should believe in.
When most of these problems spur from the Democrats.
They do. Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
Alinsky told his students that if the people that you're trying to organize are not moving, then you need to give them an experience to cause them to move. You've heard in the news, you've heard people say that don't never let a crisis go to waste. This is exactly the same thing. And if there's no crisis, create the perception that there's a crisis.
Sure.
That's all you have to do. Create the perception. And you'll get people to do what you want through the perception of the crisis.
Create the experience.
Create the experience. And that's exactly what they're doing. They create a victimization of certain groups of people so that these certain groups of people begin to feel like victims. When you look at the founding fathers and what they had in mind with regard to immigration, they had this in mind. If you're not willing to give up your culture, your religion, give up your country, and assimilate into this country, we don't want you. And we have lost that. And we've allowed this multiculturalism to come into our country. And now we have a country that's divided, where people divide themselves along racial lines, along national lines, and it's destroying our country.
And one of the things that I think that R.D. Laing was talking about was that once you present this overall experience, as you just explained, okay, that's great. You got the 9 people in the room looking at the ceiling and saying it's blue when obviously it's painted white. But then it trickles down to the individuals. It's a lot harder once you start getting down. In fact, it's a reverse version of Reaganomic trickle-down theory, where it's like, okay, great, we're going to promote this theory, but it gets a little tougher when you trickle it down to the individual person, doesn't it?
It gets perverted.
Well, yeah, and it
gets perverted.
My question is, why were 9 people willing to believe that it was blue? That's what I'm talking about.
Well,
you've got 9 people that are unwilling to think critically and they're just willing to,
exactly.
to believe what they're told.
And that's what Artie Lang was talking about. I mean, it actually falls into play about, look at global warming. Look at how all the scientists they all agree global warming. Where's the money coming from? Oh, we all agree that it's man is causing global warming. Yes, thank you for that check. Yes, the world is warming up because of man. Oh, thank you for that other check. You know, this is what's coming on, and then the people who are saying, wait a minute.
Meanwhile,
wait a second.
I'm
not sure this is exactly what's going on. These people are having a different experience. They're looking at things differently. But here's part of what Saul Alinsky said, is that if you can get a mass of people to believe in this one paradigm, then you can denigrate the other ones who disagree. What did Trotsky say? Trotsky actually invented the word racism because of the people in Central Siberia who wouldn't adopt communism. He told them, he adopted the word racism, that these people are clinging. What did Obama say? Clinging to their religion and guns. Trotsky said it too. These people are clinging to their religion and their tribalism and their way of life. These people are clinging to their race. They are racists. Go ahead, Mark.
Again, you've got a culture that was primed for this, because we're a postmodern culture, and by postmodern, I'm saying that people are relativists by nature. They believe that that their belief, their experience, is truth, and they've lost the idea that truth is something that's an absolute, that it can be counted on from generation to generation. It's something that we can point to and always say this is right and this is wrong. And so any culture that loses the ability to think critically and accept these kinds of things is able to be controlled by any kind of leader that comes along that's charismatic enough to get them to believe they're in their crisis.
Right. What blows my mind all the time is I've been doing these interviews since 2008, and I talk to people, I watch the news, I research the news. I'm going to use Donald Trump right now. You know, he said that thing.
I see that smirking.
My son, Mark's smirking too. Hey, enough out of you guys. But here's my point. Donald Trump, hey, the guy might have misspoken, spoken out of turn. I don't think he did it either. I know. But I'm trying to make a point here. Can I just do my show here?
Make your point, but I think he was in the right.
Anyway. So he said this thing about illegals. Instantaneously, the news jumps all over him. That becomes the paradigm. That becomes the news story. Donald Trump is a racist. Donald Trump is wrong. But then on the side, independent news sources are producing pieces of literature and reports of, well, you know what? Actually, this guy's kind of right. There are rape trees.
Evidence.
There are rape camps. There's a bunch of drug and there was just a report just put out from L.A. that pretty much all the gangs here. Yeah, don't worry about the black gangs. You got to worry about the illegal Mexican gangs because they're huge in L.A. They're huge, but no one's paying attention to this, Mark. No one's paying attention. Everyone's paying attention to what Donald Trump says. And this is what blows my mind, is that somebody will say something. Everyone jumps on their case. And I always like to sit back and wait a day or two. It's like, you know what? Wait a second. Just let just to see. Sure enough, the truth eventually comes. But again, Mark, no one pays attention to the truth. They pay attention to the 30-second soundbite. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, the ceiling's blue, Chris. That's all I can tell you.
The ceiling's blue.
Yes, they believe what they're told.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. That people have got to start thinking critically. Just because you hear something, I call it the power of suggestion. I call it the power twins: the power of suggestion and the power of assumption. Our subconscious, anytime something is suggested to us, our subconscious will go to work trying to find evidence to prove that as true. So if you suggest that someone's having an affair, suddenly you're treating them psychologically as if they're someone having an affair, when in reality it may not be true.
Right.
So all you need is the power of suggestion, because people are not thinking critically, and they will begin to believe whatever their subconscious is telling them, and they will have feelings generated from that, and from those feelings they make their decisions based on their feelings.
Thanks.
And so
Perception is
feelings
reality.
are actually secondary to belief.
Yeah, and
Most people believe that feelings are what, today, feelings are what they need to believe from.
Yeah, perception becomes
the other way around.
perception
Yeah.
becomes reality. Right.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, and so here we go into everything that comes out in the news, where everything is flashed in front of our face. We don't always know the facts. We don't always know what's going on. Is this, again, getting back to our dumbed down education, getting back to what we now have as Common Core? We're going to indoctrinate the next generation of children into this Common Core. We're being set up for an entire generation and society of just drones that just regurgitate and just obey. I mean, I'm going to use the conspiracy theorist thing here, Mark, but sir, you've researched, I do this show, I've talked to many guests. I don't know, I don't want to believe this, but I keep interviewing people, I keep talking to people, I keep seeing things online, I keep seeing things in the news, I keep seeing it over and over again. I'm starting to think that there's something to this, that we're leaning towards that indoctrination, that self-destruction, that indoctrination, to where we're just going to be worker robots for a big government, one world government, aren't we, sir?
I think it even goes beyond that. I think that we're looking at a desire for a globalization of government.
Yes.
And that's not a conspiracy theorist. I mean, when you look at the evidence and the signs of the times, when you look at biblical prophecy, you're going to see the same thing.
Sure.
There are people that want to bring this globe under a singular government, and I think that that's always working toward it. Why do you see that it's all of a sudden wrong in America to be a nationalist?
Right.
To love my country.
Right.
To be proud of American exceptionalism. Why is that suddenly wrong? Because they don't want us to have that feeling of pride in our own country, because they want our country to assimilate at some point.
Do away with American pride, do away with American traditionalism. In fact, even Christianity, and even I've had this argument with other Christians. It's like, oh no, Christianity, it's all about it's all about Jesus. It's like, no, you need to understand about the core roots of Christianity. Christianity, in order to become a Christian, you come to that cusp upon yourself. You do it yourself. It is the ultimate form of individualism and individual liberty. You make that decision to become a Christian, to follow Christ. This is what is the beauty of Christianity, and why Christianity is so interwoven into our liberties as the United States, is because you become this. This is your individual choice. And this is what liberty is about. Your individual decision, your individual choice. Islam, either accept Islam or we put a bullet in your head. That's it. Same thing with socialism and leftism. Either you accept this, or we're gonna take away your house, we're gonna take away your money, we're gonna look at the Oregon family. We're gonna fine you $135,000 because you won't bake a cake for gay people. I'm sorry, Mark, but I thought this country was based on religious freedom. Am I wrong?
It is supposed to be. It is supposed to be. And yet we see these freedoms being eroded. But again, it's easy to erode freedoms when you think, if you ask the average person on the street, where does the right of the freedom of religion come from? They would say government.
Right.
And that is absolutely false. That they don't understand natural law. Our founders understood natural law, that there is a law that transcends humanity itself.
Right.
And because there's a law that transcends humanity, then we have something fixed upon which we can measure one another and ourselves And I've always said my definition of freedom isn't to do whatever you want. That's most people's definition of freedom today, especially today. My definition of freedom is you have the right to govern yourself.
Right.
And the moment you don't govern yourself, the law steps in to force you into compliance. In other words, when you start stepping on my liberties and you're not governing yourself, then I have the law as my protection that you don't step on my liberty.
And here's the thing too, anybody who does say that and exercises that, again, I do all sorts of research. I'm trolling the web all the time. I see tons of people all the time exercising their individual liberty, their individual religion, their individual freedom. And what happens, Mark? They're placed under arrest, they're fined, they're chastised, they're hauled out of a city council meeting because they're trying to tell the city council you need to honor your oath to the Constitution and to God, and they're hauled out by the police. I see it all the time. It's a new form of persecution, isn't it? Individual freedom, constitutional rights, this whole premise that America is built upon is under arrest now. It's under persecution now. Again, never mind critical mass, never mind implosion. The train has gone off the cliff. We're in free fall. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, and you could trace some of this stuff back to the hate speech legislation, because this is the government's attempt to control how you think. This isn't just a matter of breaking the law. When people abuse somebody else because of their color, for instance, or because of their gender, or because of their sexual orientation, and they physically attack them, there are laws on the book that protect them from that kind of physical harm. But there should never be a law that is against me disagreeing with your lifestyle and saying so publicly. If you're offended, I have the right to offend you. You have the right to offend me. This is a free country. But see, the government wants to step in with hate speech laws and try to control what we can say and what we can think.
And that's what we have. Amazing. That's exactly what we have right now. I'm almost at a loss for words. It's Mark, is there hope? Is there a silver lining? Is there? I mean, I want to say. I always say. I try to be optimistic. I want to say, this is an exciting time to live in America. It's an exciting time because we're going through all of this. We're going through all of this right now. We're going through all of this. Even though it's the darkest days, it's an exciting time because, of course, human history has been through this before. And we've always come out bigger, better. Times have moved on. Is there hope? Is there hope, Mark?
Well, there's always hope, but again, it comes down to the right people doing the right things. And I'm afraid that most Christians have hunkered down into the four walls of their church and merely practice their religion while their country goes to hell.
I think so too.
And it's going to take these people to get outside of their church and realize that there's a duty, there's a Christian duty for you to go out and vote. Only 25% of people, of Christians, evangelical Christians, voted. There's something really, really wrong with that number. Because it is your duty to choose the kind of men and women to lead this country that have a virtuous worldview.
Let me say this right now. There's also a Christian duty to fight. Sometimes even God, Archangel Gabriel, will back you up. Sometimes you have to do that horrible thing. Sometimes you have to. It is a terrible, horrible thing. But you have to do it because there are evil people in the world. There are evil elements in the world. And there's no other. You can't talk them out of the evil. You can't placate them. You can't vote them out of the evil. You can't even, I don't know, be friends with them to eradicate evil. sometimes you have to do that horrible, horrible thing and fight them and kill them. And let me give you one example. Let's look at ISIS. Listen, Mark, I've seen the videos. You've seen the videos. Everyone in America has seen the videos. Let me give you an example. There was one video. There were dump trucks. There must have been 3, 4, maybe 5 of them. The back of the dump truck is full of Christians on their way to be slaughtered. Now listen to me on this, Mark, and listen to me, ladies and gentlemen, in my audience. In these dump trucks, let's say there's 3 of them. In the back of the dump trucks, there's, I don't know what, a dozen Christians. In the dump trucks, there's maybe 1, 2 drivers, maybe 1 guy sitting on top with an AK-47 guarding the dozen or so. Here's what burns my brisket, Mark, is why didn't somebody, or the one dump truck full of a dozen people say, excuse my French, Mark, fuck it, let's take these people, let's take them. Oh, but we'll die. We're going to die anyway.
Yeah,
let's
really.
take them.
Let's
take them. What's the point?
If you have no will to fight?
What's the point? This is my thing about Christianity, is why did they bow their heads? Why did they take that bullet? Why aren't people fighting, kicking, screaming, doing something? Oh, well, maybe they might have taken 1 dump truck and killed 1 or 2 of those people. That doesn't matter.
There's been nothing but a
they
unilateral
stood up and they
attempt
did
to
something about it.
pacify everyone
And
across
maybe
the
if
world.
maybe if ISIS or maybe some of these other Islamic groups knew that the Christians aren't going to sit there and just cry and bow and get their heads cut off, but pull out an AK-47 and pull the trigger. Do you see where I'm going, Mark? I know this is against Christianity. I know it's against God's law, but sometimes Archangel Gabriel, even he would say, "Yeah, guys, come on, get your act together."
I believe defending yourself would not be against Christian law, as far as I'm concerned. If someone's trying to attempt to take the lives of you or your family or any person you love,
you have every right.
You fight back, and you
it's
are
a God-given
well within
right.
your rights to fight back, whether it be rights as a U.S. citizen or rights by God. And I'm saying that as an atheist.
Go ahead, Mark. Take it from here.
Well, let me say this, that there is some validity to martyrdom.
I'm not talking about martyrdom. I'm talking about standing up.
Fighting for your life when you know there is no good way out of a situation.
For a certain reason. What I'm saying is, God, the God that gave us life, also gave each individual dominion over the earth. That means that as an individual, I don't have a right to have dominion over you because you also have dominion. Now, for me to sit there and not protect my family, I think would be a sin in God's eyes.
Sure.
I agree.
If somebody is coming against me and I have the means to stop them, or coming against my family, I have every right to defend myself with force. Wrong with that. But there are times, and I think it goes more to calling than anything else, that Christians are martyred and they don't fight back because they go into that martyrdom in that way. And I think their martyrdom speaks volumes and for Christianity, and it speaks volumes for humanity itself, that there is a God that loves us, and he doesn't care for people doing these kinds of things. And by the way, look at history. Every time you get a people that is vicious and violent like this, in the end, in the long term, they're the losers.
Yeah,
every time.
Right. That's true. Unfortunately, though, Mark, this is where you and I'm Christian, you're a pastor. I call myself a difficult Christian. Yeah. He knows what I'm talking about. You know, I work very hard, and many times I fail, but I try so hard. My belief in God, the resurrection of Jesus, I believe in that 100%. And if the two of them upstairs see see to it that someday I will be welcomed in. I will be so gracious. But right now, sir, right here on Earth, I'm sorry, sir. I am going to sling up my weapon and do what I can to preserve our freedoms, preserve our liberties, and do battle against God's enemies. And again, I use the term Archangel Gabriel, and it's like, yeah, sometimes you gotta kiss the hand of the devil in order to get the devil's due done, you know. And it's really bad, and I hate doing that. But I mean, this is the world we're living in now, and if we're gonna sit by and watch Christians get slaughtered, and watch Jews get slaughtered, and watch innocent women and children be ushered out to rape camps, I can't, sir. I can't stand by.
I don't agree with any of that at all.
Oh,
I don't agree with what they're doing. I don't agree with the violence that is being shown. I don't agree with the rape camps. I don't agree with the murders they're doing. I think that if there's an army out there that could go take them out, they should go take them out. What really disheartened me with regard to Iraq, though, is that when these people came in, the Iraqi army outnumbered them, yet they laid down their weapons. They weren't willing to fight.
Yeah, exactly. This is the other thing. It's like, what are you people doing?
Why are we out there doing it for them then?
Right,
And
exactly.
that's the thing. We were there for so long, and yet there's no point in protecting people that lack the will to fight.
This brings me back to the dump truck scenario I was talking about. It's like there's a dozen people in the dump truck. Yeah, but that guy has an AK-47. There's a dozen of you in the dump truck. Yeah, he'll kill 3 or 4 of you, but the other 7 or 8 will take you. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah, same thing with the flight there, the crash where in Pennsylvania.
Yes, Flight 93.
They took
Flight 93.
But they took them.
They all knew they were going. Here's the thing. This is my point. This is what I'm saying, Mark. Is that you're going to die. Yeah, I'm going to die. What's the choice? Knees or on your feet?
Exactly.
That's the choice.
Yeah.
Exactly. Are you going to die and just die, or are you going to fight for your life?
Exactly. Mark David Shaw, I want to thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Sure enough.
Absolutely fantastic interview. Thank you so much, sir. Restoring America Together Network, and that is what, on .net.com. What is that? Give your information.
On Facebook, you can get all of our resources. All you have to do is Tea Party Conservatives for Freedom.
There you go.
Type that in. We got 27,600 plus members. Just come in and join us, and you'll see information. We're doing a couple new projects, Chris. One of them is Constitutional Moments. I have one of my students working on that, where they're reintroducing people to the Constitution of the United States.
Wonderful.
And we're doing another segment called Redeeming the Fathers of America, where our founding fathers have so been maligned with academia that I wanted to bring the truth out. And most of them were Christians, not deists, as you will hear them say. And we give the proof, and we talk about their lives. And so we're doing that as well. Fun projects, and we post them as we get them done on at that site, Tea Party Conservatives for Freedom.
And Mark, as you know, you've seen it before, this thing is going to go viral all over social media. And I want to thank you so much again. Third time, man. And you'll be back. Because it's not like this crap is getting any better, right, Mark?
No, it's not going away anytime soon.
Exactly.
We have to keep fighting.
Mark David Shaw, thank you so much for calling into the show. I'll talk to you soon, sir.
All right.
Good night, sir.